Carl is the main character in Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I'm going to be doing an illustration that I'm calling Carl Swimsuit Edition from about midway in the series, and I'm going to be really enjoying doing this. It's being done in Rebel 8, actually, the latest version of the program. It's a really fun, great program. And I have it right here, all beautifully good to go. I hope you enjoy my drawing of this, and I'm going to be talking about Carl, the character, while we're going along and seeing how this is painted at the same time. I just put it all together. Why not, right? I'm very enthusiastic about this series. Dungeon Crawler Carl has been so much fun. And I know I don't look like its target demographic like at all, but oddly, this is just really appealing for the very reason I did this illustration. It's because the characters are fantastic. So Carl is the main character in a lit RPG. That's books with game-like progression systems. I mean, not my cup of tea usually. And everyone knows that these lead characters in the genre are usually like about as thick as a sheet of paper, normally speaking. The character of Carl in Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman is like really weird for this genre. Okay, so well, that's their inspiration, right? The RPG sheet of paper, a literal sheet of paper. Maybe sometimes 3 sheets of paper. Does that include the little drawing, however? Like the stick figure with the pirate hat or whatever you usually have in the corner? Depending on how far into the campaign you are in your Dungeons & Dragons campaign, it does not include the 10-page inventory sheet. And I've certainly seen enough of this where that and the character stats were the most heavily referenced part of the 3 sheets of paper. Certainly not the character piece. In complex systems, you'll get maybe a fifth of a page worth of character development. This guy, Carl, my buddy, he has depths. He's complex. He's being written by a pantser pantsing so hard that there's no bottom to his backstory, but plenty of bottoms interested in his back. Stupid. So Carl's story is equal parts tragic and comic. You see this like really clearly from the start, right? It's like a horror book with comedy. He's outside with his ex-girlfriend's Persian show cat freezing his ass off in sub-zero weather, wearing boxers and 2 small pink Crocs with a thrown-on loose jacket when it all goes down. He's introduced with this like humor, which is fun, and bam, here's your neighbor's head lying in the snow. Everybody's dead and he's got to enter a dungeon in the ground or freeze to death on the spot. The whole series continues like this for thousands of pages, where comedy and tragedy, or horror, depending on how you want to put it, follow each other, and Carl the everyman tries his best to just cope. He doesn't react physically from situation to situation. He has thoughts about it. He weighs the moral scales. He frequently throws his hands up in disgust when offered no real choices. You know, like life. The man is relatable, and he's frequently really, really funny as he plays off his magical talking cat friend Princess Donut. You know, she has the Riz. They're the Key and Peele of the World Dungeon. Carl is empathetic to the other character's plight. Like, a nurse that has to kill her own patients, a woman unfairly denied motherhood, crawlers, that's what people trapped in the world dungeon are called, having to choose between their friends to decide who gets to live, or if they'll sacrifice themselves to save others. It's this character trait that really makes, Carl the linchpin of the resistance and makes him a great example of positive masculinity for a change. He's never dismissive of the other characters' struggles, even when voiced by like a rolling sex doll head with burnt hair, which is really a thing in the series. Shout out to Samantha. Carl is aware of the danger inherent in becoming numb to tragedy, and it makes it a point. He makes it a point to stay sensitive, even though it's awful. He realizes that even his enemies in the dungeon are victims in a cruel cycle of like violence set up by an uncaring, corrupt government with all the power and none of the accountability. There's an early boss battle that's so screwed up and perfectly lays this out for us. I give it an A for moral ambiguity. It's great stuff in a literary genre that's usually just concerned with rolling the initiative. Not that Matt Dinniman doesn't do that too. Carl's plot armor is canon. Carl is an everyman character. He hits things with his bare hands and feet or blows them up. He's strong, but not overwhelmingly so. He's reasonably intelligent, but no good at maths. He's tall and ruggedly good looking, but he's not Chris Hemsworth. He's a meat and potatoes kind of guy, or as my wife likes to say, he's no pizza roll. I don't know, she loves pizza rolls. Anyway. So what keeps him alive book after book? Plot armor in the form of a deranged AI, the de facto god of gods from which everything comes. Carl's in another terrible situation. He receives a loot box containing mysterious solutions to future problems. Carl was running against a previous dungeon ruling, it's a staple of lit RPG. The AI finds that his novel interpretation is a valid fringe case. To keep us invested in the AI character, Matt gave it an unnerving foot fetish for Carl. You've got to hear it in the audiobook to get the maximum creep factor. The AI itself has its own character arc that's also subject to pantsing, wild stuff happens. Plot armor is also provided by outside forces and actions of other characters, but all of it has to go through the all-seeing AI. Even other characters in the series have noted the AI's favoritism for Carl's shenanigans. So, is Carl the perfect base or springboard to just throw whatever crazy or gory or ridiculous horseshit Matt could come up with against this character? Having read reviews for Battlefield Kaiju, I don't believe Matt is throwing everything he can think of. I believe Matt's imagination can be much more twisted and darker than we experience in the series, and that includes the fate of many a frenzied gerbil. Part of the unusual features of Carl is that his experience in the dungeon is a whole lot like a regular lady's experience in real life than it is a usual, fantasy hero's. We're talking about a character who's got an overarching, godlike figure who's obsessed with his feet. He has been forced into a position where he has to wear adorable heart covered boxers, like man lingerie for the entire series every time he wants to go anywhere or goes outside. So Carl gets left out of things all the time because he's not considered the right gender to be part of them. And he has a tremendous audience watching him 24/7 all the time, with all kinds of commentary on his appearance, how he acts, what he chooses to do, and it's very judgy. And these are the kinds of things that a lady has to put up with on a regular basis. It's very interesting how Dinniman has been able to put a gender flip situation into a lighthearted fantasy book and fold it in so seamlessly that a lot of people just don't even notice. Here he is running around in his cute little shorties. Everyone has an opinion on it, and it's considered something he just needs to take for the team. Some of the things that he's forced to do in the name of taking one for the team to keep the powers that be happy are super wrong and hypersexualized in a gross way. And somehow Matt makes this a palatable, literary, and sometimes fun experience. And I honestly don't even know how that's done. I mean, that's very impressive. Thank you, Matt. On the other hand, a little bit more commentary on it directly might be in order. Although Princess Donut has very much noticed this exact trend, and the character has commented directly on it, how Carl is just expected to do this, and if he had been a lady, they would have not even thought about it twice about what they demanded of him. And of course, that's quite right. When you're doing an illustration for a book, it's really important to try to capture the spirit of the novel in your illustration. And in this illustration, I tried to make a sexy Carl who's aware of how he's being taken advantage of, while at the same time making him really cute. This painting was inspired by the advertising illustrations of the 50s and 60s. They are highly gendered, they're rendered really flatly, they're done almost entirely with direct painting, and everyone in it has the role they're supposed to play. It is really, really awkward to look at in retrospect, and fascinating. So here's Carl, very much in the position of a 50s housewife at the beach, with his wet cat, Princess Donut, the Queen Anne chunk, where she is very angry and super wet and all upset. Many adventures and terrible things happen to the poor lady. There she is on the beach, soggy as all get out. In the back we have Orthus, the two-headed giant puppy, which was tremendous fun to draw and paint. And I look forward to doing some more things with this later. So Space Puppy in the back is all blue because I imagine that you'd have to see through this enormous bubble that they are all in, and they pushed out to the outside of the bubble, so I imagine that you'd have to look through all of the air all the way through the bubble, and so you've got an atmospheric perspective with the clouds dancing in between you and the subject way out there. And I think it works. It pushes him into the back, and it gives you a sense of the size, I think, that we're going for here. I mean, this thing is enormous. He is so big and cute and adorable. I really liked how Matt handled that, and I understand that this was yet another one of Matt's Patreon effects of random generation of events that he then has to overcome as a writer. And in the case of Orthus, I really enjoyed it quite a lot. Because in the book, the feet of the character are so important, I knew I had to illustrate them super clearly. I'd make them as shiny as I could and give it a kind of a graphic quality. I had a lot of fun illustrating these feet, which, with their incredibly shiny toenails and their sparkly ankles, so that text of the book would be faithfully rendered. In doing this painting, I used a real model with excellent lighting from the correct side, and I absolutely needed him because I do not think I would have been able to render out the feet like this without having somebody's real feet to paint. It is an awful lot to try to memorize every piece of anatomy and feet in particular. You'll notice in many illustrations that artists will tend to hide hands or hide feet or hide both when they just don't want to have to deal with it. In this painting, we don't have any of that. I needed the best references I could get my hands on. Fortunately, this fellow here is perfect for the job. However, I did not pay for his broadcast rights, so I certainly can't show you the originals. Otherwise, I would. Feet are hard. So don't let anybody tell you differently. I'll probably be doing an entire series of illustrations based on Dungeon Crawler Carl on account of I have all the books. I've very much enjoyed it, and there are so many scenes that really, really need a painting. Read Dungeon Crawler Carl. It's awesome, and Carl is a sexy, sexy guy.